We hear talk of unlearning harmful messages and conditioning all the time. But is unlearning even possible? I just wanted to quickly share a portion of a book I'm planning on reviewing and interviewing the author of ahead of that review and conversation, because I find it relevant to how we might approach consciousness raising and radicalization. The book is called Moving Beyond the Left by Z, and I have quite a lot of thoughts to share on it, so stay tuned for recent readings on that. I can't share the pages themselves since it's an early copy, but I'll indicate when I'm not quoting so you can differentiate my thoughts from the text. Wrapped up within the moral and at times sadistic games of psychological manipulation that some leftists play is a common mythology that the masses, as separate from and beneath them, have unlearning to do. Who is to determine when others have properly unlearned what they should unlearn? We are left only to guess, it seems. However, to quote psychologist Stephen C. Hayes from his text A Liberated Mind, there's nothing in all of psychology called unlearning. Okay, let's end quote for a moment. This is a bold statement because I think people are familiar with the concept of unlearning in the sense of intentionally letting go of harmful or outdated beliefs and biases, however imperfect. But let's read on. Quote, even things you have forgotten stay with you, lurking below your consciousness. That is why you can relearn them more readily later. The unstoppable relation making we do accounts for why, if we try to get rid of a thought, we actually create a new relation in our minds between it and our efforts to expunge it. Now we'll have the new automatic thought coursing through our minds. I've got to get rid of that thought. Great. That's progress, not. End quote for a moment. I remember when I was a Christian child worrying about so-called unclean thoughts. I would honestly end up cementing those thoughts in my brain by trying to avoid thinking of them. It was all very stressful when I thought God was real and would be scrutinizing my thoughts for potential eternal torment fodder at all times. So I definitely get this notion that the thoughts you try to get rid of can be haunting. Let's read on. Quote, in Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, Stephen C. Hayes, along with Spencer Smith, says the following, with reference to relational frame theory, or RFT. Once your history establishes a relational network, you can only elaborate on that network. You cannot make it go away. We are creatures of our histories, and our every moment adds to that history. Our nervous system works by addition, not subtraction. To some degree, things we learned once are still part of us. Words just rumble around within the verbal networks that comprise our minds. Typically, there they stay. When we try to get rid of them, they stick to us like sticky tape we've grabbed with the intention of throwing it away, but it won't let go. End quote for a moment. Addition, not subtraction, seems to be how our brains work, unless you've been lobotomized, of course. But seriously, I think building tends to be more effective at changing behavior than dismantling. I spoke about it in an episode of It Could Happen Here that I recorded, though I don't think it has been released just yet. So I'll say it here. If you're trying to get people out of an ideologically totalist environment, you can't just be debating and attacking the ideology, because it's so tied to their personhood that it'll feel like an attack on the self. It's better to connect them with people outside of the cult, to introduce alternative frameworks they can build on, so they are not without a social and cognitive harbor to feel like they can be safe in. Let's read on. Quote, if you have never considered yourself a leftist, or have similarly never considered yourself a member of any organized religion, then, with these insights from Hayes in mind, you might now more easily imagine that having millions of individuals repress and even futilely attempt to remove certain cognitive processes from their minds because of their negative associations under moral outlooks and the false conflation of these mere cognitive processes with core personhood is a recipe for disasters. You might also see that, to make matters worse, this psychological phenomenon transpires in the presence of a stratum of individuals and a culture rooted in both judgment and arbitration around social performance, many of whom find a home in left networks and spaces that have barely begun to question moralism as a whole. This is simply because inherent to common interpretations of leftism as a framework is moralism. End quote. I'll save some comments for my review of the book, but I definitely wanted to share this food for thought because although I don't consider myself a leftist, I am connected with people who consider themselves as such, and however one chooses to identify and align with, I think it's important to consider how all of us can develop a culture capable of taking a healthier approach to growth and transformation in community. All power to all the people. Peace.